bring in William Ruger, president of the American Institute for Economic Research, also a veteran of the Afghanistan war, who was nominated by President Trump to serve as ambassador to Afghanistan. Thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So what would you say? I just wanted to kind of ask a broader question. What would you say is a common perception and misconception about conflicts between Israel and Palestinians? We've seen a war in this region of the world before. We look at it often through a Western lens, but because of the cultural differences in the Middle East, a lot of the information we're receiving may need context. So what would you say?
Well, I think a lot of Americans don't know very much about the kind of long history of conflict between these organizations. I mean, they obviously understand that there has been conflict, but the kind of repeated challenges that have been faced both by Israel and by Palestinians as they've tried to find a path forward, because there are so many Palestinians living within the West Bank and Gaza, and the challenges Israel faced securing itself, but at the same time finding a path forward to some type of stability or peace. And that's always been a challenge in this region. A big part of that is because of the history of terrorism that we've seen in this region.
And that is exactly top of mind for Secretary Blinken as he travels back to the area today. Obviously, it's early. I mean, we're only days into this conflict, even though it's nearing a month. And the U.S. has reiterated support for Israel. But is it too soon for Blinken and others to be asking Israel and its Arab allies what the end game is, as they're calling it? What would happen when Hamas is removed?
Yeah, I mean, I think good military strategists are political strategists in the sense, as you know, the famous German general Clausewitz talked about, which is that war is politics by other means. You always have to think about what is your desired end state and how you tune your ends and means to meet those ends, or your means and ways to meet those ends. And in the case of the Israeli strikes on leadership, right, they want to cut the head off the organization to try to punish Hamas and disrupt their command and control. The challenge, of course, is that there's a mixed record of success historically for leader decapitation, as it's called. Some organizations have been more resilient than others. And so, again, the challenge is for Israel is, okay, once they go on this ground offensive, what next, even if they're successful at disrupting the leadership of Hamas, or either moving closer to its target of wiping out their governing capabilities.
We've seen so much criticism levied on Israel, especially by those who would consider themselves pro-Palestinian, but in many instances, they're also anti-Jewish. Is this a holy war, a PR war? How would you describe it?
Well, I think everyone around the world should deplore anti-Semitism and should deplore the targeting of innocent non-combatant civilians. And that's what we saw 3 weeks ago. And I don't think we should forget that, because, you know, that's a context here that I think really matters. It's one of the reasons why I think you'll see Israeli tolerance of casualties on their side. But we want to make sure, I think, as an international community, that we don't forget the fact that discrimination on the battlefield in terms of what type of targets are acceptable and proportionality in terms of the targeting decisions and what type of costs could be posed to civilians has to be front of mind here. And I think it should be, not just because it's the right thing to do, but for Israel, it's important that you don't have these strikes backfire in terms of the support that they rightfully got after those awful terrorist attacks 3 weeks ago.
In terms of the threat to U.S. troops, obviously not in Israel, but in surrounding countries, how concerned should we be?
Well, I don't think that the United States is wise to maintain forces in places like Syria and Iraq, because the Biden administration hasn't provided a good justification for why they're there in the first place. So when we've seen U.S. strike back, it's understandable, right? You want to protect those troops. But we're striking back to protect troops that are there for reasons that have long, I think, been passed by. I mean, largely they are related to not only the war in Iraq, but the conflict against ISIS. But they're not really needed at this point, and they're only becoming targets. So I think the United States should redeploy those troops. It doesn't mean that we leave the region, but there are better ways, I think, to handle this and to avoid the possibility of escalation, because the United States doesn't need to be in a hot war again in the Middle East. We can support Israel without troops.
That's a very interesting perspective, and thank you. As you served there, as we mentioned, your ambassadorship. Thank you so much, William Ruger, for being with us. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.